brought to you by Indeed. Listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/AllCity. That's Indeed.com/AllCity. Terms and conditions apply. If you need to hire, you need Indeed. Welcome into our emergency podcast, the PHLY Phillies podcast. Yes, we've got breaking news as of Friday afternoon while we were all sitting around enjoying our beautiful Fridays. The news broke. The Phillies have made a move. We wondered with the trade deadline coming up what they would do, guys. Tyler Zulli, Jamie Lynch, myself, Renee Washington, everybody in the chat. Now we know the first move has been made. The Phillies have acquired outfielder Austin Hayes from the Baltimore Orioles. They have traded Seranthony Domínguez and Cristian Pache to the Orioles. Lots to take away from this. Some initial stats that we'll get into. We'll talk through that. 29-year-old Hayes comes to the Phillies. Before we even start getting into numbers and the breakdown of who he is, Jamie, I know you're on the golf course, so I want to get your thoughts right away. Does it pass the eye test? Are you excited? What were your thoughts when you heard the breaking news mid-golf?
Yeah, I'm out on the golf course. The Phillies only seem to do things when I have something going on in my life. So very, very thoughtful of them. Beautiful course out here. Not hitting them great. Started out strong. But yes, obviously, kind of my initial reaction is there's a couple ways to grade trades, right? Like Randy Arozarena going to Seattle earlier today is kind of like a big splash type of move a little bit, at least for guys moved at the deadline. So it's certainly not a big splash trade, but what I think it is a really smart trade because Seranthony, look, he's had highs. He's had a little bit of stretches here where it looks like he's back. He's a guy that throws gas. He's also a guy that's turning 30 relatively soon. So he kind of is what he is, right? Like there's still a little bit of upside there, but you more or less know what Seranthony is. I don't know how many high leverage spots you felt comfortable throwing him in the playoffs this postseason. And Cristian Pache, we've talked about all year. Like the only reason to play him a lot leading up to the deadline was to try and showcase him a little bit and throw him in as that expiring major league ready kind of guy. Like he's somebody to fill a spot. Austin Hayes, obviously an all-star last year. Numbers aren't as great this year, but his numbers versus lefties are spectacular. So it does look like him and Brandon Marsh are going to be a true left field platoon. Maybe occasionally Marsh and Rojas could do a center field platoon off of that. But his numbers versus lefties are great, and that's what the Phillies were looking for. You obviously deplete your bullpen, giving up Seranthony. So I would look for the Phillies to probably make at least one, if not two moves ahead of Tuesday's trade deadline. We'll see where they go there. Maybe the big splash is Tanner Scott from Miami. We'll see what happens, but I'm not terribly upset about what we gave up. Seranthony, Pache's a nothing burger, I guess as they say. Seranthony, don't mind losing him. And if Austin Hayes would just go ahead and do the right thing here and wear number 9 in Philadelphia, then a lot of old school Philadelphia Phillies fans don't even need to get a jersey. They already have their Von Hayes jersey that they can rock. So, I think that was very thoughtful of them.
Sharpie the E out.
Just put a little duct tape over it. So all in all, a good trade, a smart trade. I'm not doing naked cartwheels on the golf course kind of trade, but definitely a smart trade.
Yeah, and I want to give a big shout out to everybody in the chat. I know there's a lot of conversation that's been going on in the chat as everybody was eagerly awaiting the start of our show. You guys have been talking through the chat, sharing your thoughts. To your point, Jamie, I don't think it's one that has you doing the cartwheels and ready to streak down Broad Street, but it is a move. It is something that we expected to see from the Phillies at some point. So I know you got to go. So I want to give you a chance to get all your thoughts out because as we all see, you're on a beautiful golf course right now. People are wondering where you're at. But as we also know, this should be the first step of many. This should be something else, not many, but others that the Phillies do make because now it's just to the bullpen with this move. But Jamie, before we bid you farewell, what are your final thoughts? I know we don't have you for long.
Yeah, my final thoughts are it's a smart trade, and I think there's going to be at least one and possibly even two bullpen pieces that come before Tuesday's deadline. Now we'll see. Obviously, this takes them out of the Lane Thomas sweepstakes with the Nationals, so I don't know if Kyle Finnegan was necessarily a package deal with him. Maybe they look elsewhere, like a Tanner Scott or an Estevez, or a Kyle Fairbanks, something of that ilk. But there's definitely going to be one, if not two, bullpen pieces to come from this. So all in all, a smart trade, and we await to see what's next.
Yes, and I am excited to be able to chat through this. I had a chance to chat with some of my Baltimore Orioles insiders to get some
Nice.
scoop on Austin Hayes. So got some details on who he is and how he can help the Phillies. And of course, we've got the numbers and stats that we've seen from him. As you mentioned, Jamie, he was an all-star in 2023. Austin Hayes is a guy that absolutely can be that platoon piece that the Phillies need in the outfield, and is a big part of what we've discussed of needing to bring in somebody else that can help give you good at bats, give you good outfield play, and Austin Hayes, the 29-year-old, should be able to do that. So that being
so I will bid you guys adieu. Just wanted to get my 2 cents in there as I'm walking the 12th hole at the 1912 Club. One, I'm breaking rules on the course by talking on a cell phone, and two, I don't want the wind and me walking. Yeah, I'm a real bad boy right now. This is trade deadline bad boy, Jamie. But I will see you guys tonight. All in all, good move. Good stuff, Dave Dombrowski. Let's see what's next.
Yes. And we will, of course, have our pregame watch on postgame show today. So we have plenty of time later today to talk through this some more with you guys. But later, Jamie, we'll see you for more on our show this evening. For all you guys tuning in that are curious, here's some of the numbers on Austin Hayes. He slashed a 255, 316, 395 with a 106 OPS plus in 63 games for Baltimore this season. He has actually had a number of injuries. So I know to the point Sean Comp was mentioning in the chat, he has had an injury-bitten season so far. And in 72 plate appearances against left-handers, he is slashing 328, 394, 500 with a .894 OPS. And he also, of the 212 major league hitters who have faced at least 70 left-handers this season, he has a 394 OBP, which ranks 31st out of 212 against lefties. So although he hasn't had a lot of at-bats this season due to injuries, his at-bats against lefties have been very impressive. We did see him get that all-star nod last year, because last year he was slashing 275, 325, 444 with a 769 OPS, 54 extra base hits, which included 36 doubles in that last season, 16 home runs, and set career highs last year in runs, hits, doubles, extra base hits, multi-hit games, walks, and stolen bases, with a 6 defensive runs saved in left field, which was 4th among the AL left fielders in 2023. He was really good in 2023. He was healthy in 2023. He hasn't been that in 2024. So I know people were asking about like a Cedric Mullins and where Austin Hayes ranks in the outfield for the Orioles. To be honest, the things that I've heard about him from my insiders that are Baltimore's media is that, or Baltimore media, is that he is a guy that is a great clubhouse guy. The numbers don't really emulate and show enough of his talent because of the injuries. And he has more to him than what the eye may see straight off of the numbers test. And because of a Cedric Mullins and other outfield pieces, he might be considered the weaker of the outfield, but he has a very big upside, especially when you look at the potential of him playing like he did last year in the right situation, like a platoon, could allow him to stay healthier, not have to be an everyday guy, and be able to give you that good platoon piece that we need for Brandon Marsh. Yeah, Tyler, your thoughts?
when you want to talk about defensive, like who's the lesser defender, you could put 97% of Major League Baseball outfielders are going to be lesser than Cedric Mullins. He's an elite defender. He's always been an elite defender. Cedric Mullins' bat has really slipped over the last 2 years, right? He was hitting like 215 this year, I think he was hitting. The Orioles were talking about making a move to acquire an outfielder. I've said for, I don't know how many weeks have I been saying to you guys now, watch out for the Orioles to be the team that acquires Luis Robert Jr. At this trade deadline, because I think that would be a piece that would really, really help push them over the top. So when you're talking defensively, it's really hard to compare anybody to Ced Mullins. Offensively speaking, Austin Hayes had a really struggled. He really struggled in the first half of the season. April and May were not kind. You talked about how he was a little bit banged up. June, he was much better. Small sample size, 54 plate appearances, 48 at bats, but he hit 375 over the month of June. A much, much better June for him. A guy who is strictly going to be a platoon piece. And we've talked about this before. What was the platoon going to be? Was it going to be Rojas and somebody or Marsh and somebody? Now, obviously, as you and Jamie alluded to in the beginning of the show, there's still room for Brandon Marsh to play some center and Hayes to play left. But I think that they made it pretty clear that the platoon was going to be Hayes, well, not Hayes, whomever, and Brandon Marsh against the right-handed pitching. Austin Hayes is probably going to strictly play against lefties. You brought up the lefty numbers. Really, really strong against lefties. Really, really not. Again, I shouldn't say really not, but significantly less against righties than he is against lefties. This is a move that says to me that they were always in the mindset that they were going to go around the edges, context type pieces in the outfield. And now this tells me that maybe they're going to swing a little further in the favor of a legit bullpen piece. Because, and remember too, Renee, they're now a bullpen. They're now a bullpen arm short. So whether Dominguez's return was anything or something, and the fact that you were able to parlay, Dominguez, who had a really strong end of May, beginning of June, but struggled elsewhere, and Cristian Pache, who I don't think was long for this team, no matter what, whether he was going to be a trade piece or he was going to be DFA'd once they did acquire somebody. Now, regardless how you feel about Seranthony Domínguez, you are a bullpen arm short now. So the likelihood is not only do I think they're going to acquire one, I wouldn't be stunned if they go get two, or a reliever and a starter.
Yeah, I mean, it leads to, of course, the questions of who wins this trade. Baltimore Orioles fans are thrilled. Phillies fans, I think, for the most part, and I see in the chat, Avant-Garde and different people saying it's a good trade. For everybody tuned in, regardless of which team you're a fan of, I know we do have some Orioles fans in the house that are curious to learn about Cristian Pache and Seranthony Domínguez as well. Cristian Pache is a guy, 25 years old. He's only played 98 games with the Phillies since being picked up by the Phillies from the Oakland A's in March of 2023. He is a true bench piece. He's a guy that gives you that outfield versatility and depth. Just hit 202 in 50 games for the Phillies this season. Seranthony Domínguez, on the other hand, is a piece that the Baltimore, I keep saying Baltimore, the Baltimore Orioles needed ultimately because they have been lacking in their bullpen. They needed some bullpen arms, and 29-year-old Seranthony Domínguez, who we as Phillies fans and media know is not the answer for your bullpen. I'm sorry to say, especially given when you look at the numbers in his 230 games for the Phillies over 6 seasons. He's posted a 3.55 ERA. He's someone that's been very up and down. And when Seranthony Domínguez has been bad, it's bad. You can't count on him in high leverage situations. You can't really even count on him in middle reliever roles. It's best in a low leverage situation just to eat an inning. He's not somebody, if your bullpen is struggling and needing pieces because of health and injuries, not the answer. So I don't feel like Baltimore Orioles fans, you got two good guys, nice clubhouse guys. Hard workers. Cristian Pache is a great teammate, but they're not the answer to be able to help fill in for those injuries. Whereas for the Phillies, you do get a good clubhouse guy in Austin Hayes. And shout out to Brian Waters, who works with Spotify and The Ringer, who's got his ears to the ground with Baltimore, that was telling me, if you were choosing an outfield that was first to go from the Orioles, it was going to be Hayes, but it's not because of him being so bad. It's just where they are moving, like you said, Tyler, in the direction that Baltimore's going, trying to be able to rebuild and change the tides of their team a bit. He doesn't fit anymore with their team. And looking at June as a whole, he was a big reason why they were successful in June. Was a big help, a clutch hitter, a guy that's a power hitter, and is also going to be someone that leaves it all out there. Not afraid to make the extra play, the dirty play, the dive, whatever it takes to make a good play. He's a gritty guy. He's a hard worker, and he's a really good just overall teammate that's very team first. So I think for the Phillies, for what they need right now, you look at, they didn't need to bring in a flashy guy that's going to jump off the page. Of course, we would love to have had a Randy Arozarena or a Luis Robert, who as an outfielder is that piece that jumps off the page. But to bring in a guy that's just going to leave it all out there, play hard, rock number 9 as Hayes, and be able to just be a great clubhouse team player that's going to be okay with being a platoon piece, being able to fit in wherever needed. And as a veteran in that sense, I think we'll come right in and see the bigger picture and be bought in fast. So for me, I think that's something I actually like about Austin Hayes, that he's going to come in. He's been so injury plagued this season. He's going to be probably looking for a nice change of scenery, to be a part of a winning clubhouse and be a part of a team where he can be maybe that, not an everyday guy, has his role to just be focused against left-handers and be able to help this team take that next step. And now, as we all talk about, also knowing you got the outfield check, the Phillies can now focus on locking in 2 bullpen pieces after losing Seranthony. You need 2 for sure.
So Austin Hayes was probably like 3 years ahead of the rest of the group of what has become perhaps one of the best prospect pools I've ever seen. Like the Orioles have done just an unreal job of acquiring, and that tends to happen when you go through a like tear it down to the studs rebuild. He was a couple years ahead of the Adley Rutschmans, the Heston Kiersteads, all these guys that were like knocking on the doorstep, and Gunnar Henderson, and they've had, varying levels of success. Gunnar Henderson's an MVP candidate. Adley Rutschman's widely considered to be one of the best catchers in baseball. That doesn't always happen, but it became a numbers game for the Orioles when they did get a big turnout for those 2 guys specifically. You knew you already had Cedric Mullins. Whether Cedric Mullins was going to continue to be an elite level center fielder or not, we talked about defense versus offense. We knew defensively he was. Would his offense continue to shine through at this point of his career? But you still have, despite the fact that you've brought all these guys up, despite the fact that you made a trade for Corbin Burns and you sent 2 of your higher level prospects to Milwaukee, you still have like 4 guys that are expected to be major league contributors over the next couple of seasons, whether they've made their major league debut and struggled like a Jackson Holiday, or they've yet to make their debut just yet. The Orioles were in a numbers game that Austin Hayes was never going to win.
Right.
So with that being said, this is a fine move. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that this puts them over the top. I don't think that this move bolsters either team enormously. I think that this is a move that maybe is a change of scenery for Austin Hayes and a change of scenery for Seranthony Domínguez, and Cristian Pache just finds himself in the deal. So when I look at this trade, I know Jamie said he was doing cartwheels on the golf, or wasn't going to do cartwheels on the golf course. I looked at it and went, interesting. I think interesting was the first thing that came out of my mouth. So I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I think that this is a earth-shattering move. I do believe there's more to come. I do believe that there's a much bigger move to come. And again, I think that probably is towards the back end of the bullpen as opposed to another position player. And I will add this. I wouldn't be shocked if this is not the last bench type. I shouldn't say bench piece, but this is not the last position player that the Phillies acquire. To what regard? Probably another platoon move of some kind. But I would not be stunned if a move is made if they're not entirely thrilled with Weston Wilson being a part of this playoff run, this specific playoff run. So, I know somebody brought up Jake McCarthy in the chat. A player of that ilk, where there's a skill set there, there is at least one discernible trait for a player like that. Again, we're going to use the term change of scenery a lot when it comes to these type of moves. This move to me is an overarching interesting type of move.
I might be one of the few people that, I'm not saying I'm doing cartwheels and excited and thrilled about this trade, but I actually think this could be a sneakily good move. For the Phillies specifically, you look at what they quote unquote lost in this in Seranthony Domínguez and Cristian Pache. You literally got rid of 2 guys that are on your roster that aren't really contributing and helping you in any way. You didn't lose any prospects in this deal. Not to mention, you opened up a space that now, okay, you're going to go bring in that bullpen arm. So I think this was such a harmless trade that it's low risk, high reward. If you can get Austin Hayes to be, of course, with all the injuries he's had this season, as we talked about, hasn't been able to have a good 2024. If you can get any bit of that 2023 campaign and also the success he's had against left-handers, this is a great move for the Phillies in the sense that you didn't have to lose anything for him. If they had given up, prospects or anything like that, all right, different conversation. You lost 2 guys from your everyday roster that are not helping you, to be honest. And we've talked about Pache and Seranthony Domínguez as 2 players that you get tired of the same conversation around day in and day out. Seranthony Domínguez can be really good, can be really bad. Cristian Pache gives you some glimpses every once in a while of, some good pop in his at-bats and some good plays. but overall, he's not able to even give you a lot of innings and at-bats at that. He's truly just a bench piece. So you move to players that nobody's going to lose sleep over. Great guys, wish them all the best in Baltimore. But on the other side, you get an Austin Hayes that, again, if you can just use him as a platoon piece and get something out of him, he can help with your numbers against left-handers. And most importantly, what I like about this move is you left so much available that you can still make a big move for. Like, I anticipate the bullpen arms that they're going to bring in, even if they do bring another position player, as you're mentioning, Tyler, you still have those cards. You didn't put all the cards out on the table. The Phillies still have a lot of pieces to work with. We had talked about prospects, Johan Rojas, some other names that could be involved in Phillies trades, and you didn't even use any of them. So I think from the bigger picture, when you look at this move, it's such a win. The Orioles get their bullpen arm. Good luck. You already have Craig Kimbrell. Add another Phillies bullpen arm to the list in Seranthony. But the Phillies did not lose anything, and you gained potential, more potential than you have in Cristian Pache or Seranthony Domínguez. So for the fact of like now being able to go, we know they needed to get a bullpen arm, and an outfielder. Now you have the potential to get 2 bullpen arms and an outfielder, and you still have a lot of trade pieces. The prospects you talked about, Justin Crawford, Starlin Caba, whoever they want to move is still in play. So I'm more excited about this move from that fact that they were able to really do a good job. Yes, we lost one of our Stay Loose and Sexy band members in Cristian Pache. The band was great while it lasted, but you most importantly didn't have to lose a lot of pieces to be able to bring in an outfielder that has tremendous numbers against lefties. I know Jason Stark put out a tweet because everyone's dropping some information on Austin Hayes, and just want to share, Jason Stark just shared for Austin Hayes, his hard hit percentage is a 45.4, which is the highest of his career. He also was somebody that was, as Jason Stark is saying, clearly hurt by the redesign of left field and left center field in Camden Yards. Because according to StatCast, he'd have 11 more home runs in Philly than Baltimore from 2021 to 2023.
Yeah, I mean, everybody's playing by that same design. Like Aaron Judge has to do it.
But you're there all the time. That's your home ballpark.
Yeah, but like that's kind of the beauty of baseball is that field, ballparks are designed in different capacities. Like we've talked about that. The Orioles did that for one reason and one reason only. They were tired of the Yankees coming in and hitting bombs to left field. We know why they did it, but they, like that. I'm not going to take that. Like, great that he's hitting the ball hard. I think that's the key stat. The 45% hard hit rate is significantly more important to me than than the
but it is interesting that Jason Stark added that little tidbit
there. But I will say this: we were talking about, I know we like to bash on Craig Kimbrell, and he was terrible against the Marlins. Was it 2 nights ago or last night or whatever it was? Yeah. It was just an absolute blow up for the Orioles bullpen. But so, because I know a lot of people were talking about it in the chat, how their starting rotation's been just this like carousel where they've had to use guys like Albert Suarez, who are better suited for bullpen roles to start games. Cole Irvin has, swung. He's been like a gate just back and forth between the bullpen and the rotation. But the true relief pitchers of this team, I was just going through the numbers really quickly. Obviously, we know that their big gun has been out all year. It's unfortunate that Felix Bautista, had Tommy John and UCL surgery, because he would just solidify this as a much better bullpen than I think we would initially give it credit for, because he's your closer, right? You probably don't bring Kimbrell in, but Kimbrell's been decent this year. And maybe this is the same trajectory of Kimbrell that we saw last year, where he was really good in the first half of the year, and the cracks of the foundation start to show in the second half. But he's posted a sub-3 ERA through the first half of the season. Jacob Webb has posted a 2.6 ERA through 45 innings pitched. One of the most underrated relievers, I think, in baseball, and I think it's simply because he gets overshadowed by Felix Bautista more times than not, is Yennier Cano, who has been awesome for the last 2 seasons. What Dominguez is going to be able to do is kind of what we had hoped that he would have settled into a role, and he kind of did when everything was clicking with the bullpen here, was a low leverage reliever type of role. So do I think that this is a move like on the Orioles side that's like, wow, they got Seranthony Domínguez? No, I don't. But when the Phillies bullpen was rolling the way that it was, and it was Hoffman and Alvarado and Strom and Kerkering, and then you kind of talked about Soto and Dominguez, a 5, 6, 7 role for Dominguez is probably where he should be.
Right.
So if you look at it and you say, okay, Webb, Cano, Kimbrel, you could even go to like Keegan Aiken's been pretty good this year, 3.3 ERA for them, 53 innings pitched. Like you probably get to a point where he's like the 5 for that. And if things are going well, that's where he should be. So, we were talking about Austin Hayes and maybe a rejuvenation and a revitalization in Citizens Bank Park. I'm not going to sit here and say I think that Dominguez all of a sudden has this like second half rejuvenation, but I think he is now in a role that is suitable for him. And that's why, to me, like this is a move. It's a good baseball move for the Philly sense because they upgraded a position that they needed to upgrade without giving up anything of substance. Dominguez was a free agent at the end. Dominguez was a free agent at the end of the year. The likelihood is they wouldn't have re-signed him. Cristian Pache was playing in limbo because of the fact that any kind of designation resulted in him having to pass through waivers. Would a team have claimed him? I don't know. I think that probably, but I really genuinely don't know the answer to that question. So you gave up really nothing of substance to give an opportunity for a guy to get, 10 to 15 at-bats a week, depending on the handedness of the pitchers that you're facing. If he gets 10 to 15, Marsh gets 10 to 15, and you kind of just fluctuate where you're at. It's a move that's baseball savvy. I don't think it like crushes the needle in any direction, but it could be a baseball savvy move.
Yeah, and that's why I think it's just a win-win, essentially. It's a move that it's harmless for both teams. They didn't have to lose prospects. They didn't have to lose a lot in this deal for either team. They both filled a need that they had. As you mentioned, for Seranthony Domínguez, with the Orioles having a number of their starting pitchers unable to really get past 5 innings, he can be that 5, 6, 7 guy for you in a low-leverage situation you can bring in. And then on the other side, it shows us, for everybody that's been, as we've been talking about the Phillies and what they're going to do, absolutely reiterates that they're going after bullpen arms. Not one, but at least 2. And you have to now because, yes, South Jersey Jack, as you're mentioning in the chat, the Phillies do have to replace Dominguez. And I agree with Brian. It feels like addition by subtraction. You get rid of 2 guys that are really not helping you. Subtraction to add a guy that has an upside. Some career numbers for Austin Hayes for you guys. I know this was shared. We've been sharing the season numbers, but here's some career numbers for you. Now, he was selected by the Orioles in the 3rd round back in 2016 in the MLB draft. He's appeared in just under 560 games, so 557 games for the Orioles over 7 seasons dating back to 2017. And in that time, he slashed a 262, 314, 433 with a .747 OPS. He's got 121 career doubles, 8 triples, 66 home runs, 242 RBIs, 126 walks. The big number that we keep talking about as the addition for Austin Hayes and why he's a bonus piece to add against left-handers in his career. He's hit a 272 with a .328 on-base percentage and a .463 slugging percentage. He's got a .791 OPS. His numbers this season against lefties have been phenomenal as well. As we talked about, that split of a 328, 394, .500 this season versus lefties. It's nice you bring in a piece that is exactly what they need. I hope he does actually pan out. And actually, Seth, you just triggered me saying hopefully he doesn't turn into a Whit Merrifield. I feel like at 29 years old, yes, it's been more injuries, so you can point to that. And if he can stay healthy, which is the big key for Austin Hayes, he is that guy that really should be just a solid clubhouse guy, clutch hitter, give you some power, give you some good at-bats, has played left field, can play center field, has had times to play center field in his career as well. And is someone that's, I know some were saying, again, shout out to my Baltimore Orioles Connect, was mentioning how he's someone that is actually primed to have like a little bit of a breakout season because of how he played last year and coming into this year. Unfortunately, it's just been injuries that have set that back. But there's still more in the can for Austin Hayes, it appears. And so if the Phillies, who have notoriously been doing a good job of bringing the best out of players, whether it's guys that get called up, Whit Merrifield is an exception. Not going to include him. Most guys, as they get called up, the Phillies do a really good job. Pitchers, hitters, whatever role they play. You think of like a Cody Clemens, a Weston Wilson, what they've been able, David Dahl, what they've been able to get out of guys. I think if you can give Austin Hayes a role on this team to immediately help him feel included, immediately help him feel like that, again, that change of scenery, that excitement to be in a new environment, a new clubhouse, and you can bring the best out of him, could be a really great, sneaky piece that might have been under the radar for some, but apparently there are a number of GMs that did have their eye on Austin Hayes because, as mentioned before, his numbers don't fully show the talent that is there, the work ethic that is there, his ability to make plays in the outfield. He's not someone that always gets the stats. He does some of the little things that you don't always notice or are able to quantify in that sense. So for Austin Hayes to come to the Phillies, I'm excited for it. Of course, it's not as exciting as we heard the news of like Randy Rosarena and like it's not the flashy move that we wanted, but I think for sure it still allows, most importantly, to maybe make that flashy move. It's not going to be Garrett Crochet. I know we've talked about him on the show. I know Jeff Passan just put out a tweet mentioning Garrett Crochet is probably not getting moved this season. Crochet's got all these demands about what he wants, what he expects. He's probably not going to be moved. But there's other names on the board. A Tanner Scott.
Yeah, me too. Can I start making demands? Am I allowed to do that?
I'd like to make some demands of what I need to get paid and the expectations. But there are plenty of bullpen arms out there. We're going to continue looking through them every day on our show. We're talking through as we get closer to the trade deadline, July 30th, just a few days away, of who the Phillies should be targeting and going after. And now we can shift our focus to bullpen arms, guys. We've got an outfielder. To your point, Tyler, earlier, they still could potentially look to bring in another outfielder or another positional player because you now have allowed, for the Phillies, they have allowed themselves to make a bargain deal. You still have some options, some prospects, some guys that can be moved to now be more creative. It's bargain hunting right now, and I love that.
And the thing too is, and I think somebody brought it up in the chat, I'm not good at math, so you can stop me if this is incorrect. 2 minus 1 means that there's an available roster spot on the 40 and on the 26. So with that being said, and that doesn't mean that, like, that means inevitably they're going to bring somebody up until the void is filled. So what does that mean? Who gets the call from AAA? And I'd have to go take a look at the 40 to see who is relatively available. My guess is it's going, like, I don't think Michael Mercado is available to be called back up. I do think that there is a certain amount of time he has to wait in AAA. And I'll go look at it, definitively once we're done. But my guess right now is that you probably are looking at somebody just to be here and to hold over. They would pitch in unbelievably low leverage situations. Somebody brought up, Keith brings up Marte again. I think unless they change the rule, I do think that there is a rule that states you have to, like, you can't shuttle in a certain amount of time frame. And I'll go back and double check it because I don't want to be, saying stupid things. But it'll be interested to see who is truly available if that is the case. With that being said, you now have 25 guys on your 26-man roster, and you have 39 guys on your 40-man roster. That gives you flexibility both to make a big move if you want to make a big move. That also gives you flexibility to add depth if you want to add depth. Again, I think that this is a fine acquisition. Like the WRC Plus stats tell you that this is a true platoon. Like Austin Hayes is really, really good against lefties, and Brandon Marsh is very, very good against righties. And the two probably should not overlap all that much against the same side. But you will probably see a true platoon between those two guys for the foreseeable future, unless something else, were to occur.
Yeah. And as we wrap up, because we do actually have later today, guys, our pregame, our watch along, and our post game show. So you guys get a chance to hang with us for about 4 hours, 5 hours probably later today. We will continue talking through this more as we look ahead. I know in the chat, you guys are talking through a lot of what's next. What does this mean moving forward? And for Boom Boom Birdland, yes, we will take good care of Austin Hayes. You guys take good care of Cristian Pache, as well as Seranthony Domínguez. Good luck with them. And we also now have not heard anything, to your point, Tyler. I know people in the chat are saying it, regarding who's going to replace, who's going to move up. What else is...
Colton Cowser probably gets the first look. Heston Kjerstad will probably get some run too. I see somebody brought up Colin Norby. I haven't checked in on him enough to tell you, like, I believe he's an infielder by trade. Again, I'm not going to overstep. Not going to overstep and say something stupid. But I don't know if he's had any outfield experience. I would have to check. But my guess would be Calzer and Kjerstad.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. For both teams, I think it's not an exciting move for either group, but I think it helps solve some problems that both teams have. The Orioles get a bullpen arm, and you also get a nice bench piece in Cristian Pache. For the Phillies, they get that outfield piece that we've also been talking about. And now we wait to hear what's next, because yes, now that we know the move has been made and 2 guys have been traded in this deal. Also, for both teams, you didn't move prospects. You move guys that are ready now to get into your roster, can play. If they were available to play today, can step right in and play today. You don't have guys that are going to need minor league time or anything like that. These are all 3 guys that are major league ready and already have plenty of major league experience, which I always like a move for a veteran piece, someone that you know what you're going to get from them. No question marks in that sense. So we'll stay tuned to hear more about the next plans moving forward. It does feel like another Phillies move is on the horizon. Hopefully it happens while we're already live or something, so we can just jump right into that. And for us, we will be, again, talking through all of this again later. We appreciate everybody for tuning in to our emergency podcast presented by Indeed. Again, be sure to continue to stay tuned as we've got more updates coming your way. Our very own John Foley is putting out some pieces that you guys can be checking out to make sure to stay up to date on all the articles he's posting. Jim Salisbury has pieces coming out. Plenty of updates for you guys around the Phillies, because with the trade deadline on July 30th, this upcoming Tuesday, and now 2 bullpen arms needed for the Phillies, some moves are coming soon, guys. So for Jamie Lynch, who's out at the golf course, Tyler Zulli, myself, Renee. Tyler, final thought?
By the way, I want to say thank you to any Orioles fans in here. Yes. For joining us. I hope that you have fun with the Seranthony Domínguez experience. And it's funny because I've seen reaction on Twitter from both sides range from this guy sucks to that guy sucks to they're both a great acquisition. It's so funny to see like the varying range of spectrum. And I think we've said this about 4 times. I will say this. I think both teams made a baseball savvy move that was numerically driven for the Orioles and was platoon driven from the Phillies. I don't expect like insane returns for either acquisition. These are midline moves to me. If you were to say like, who do you think is going to have a bigger return on investment? I would have to lean the Phillies because of the fact that I do believe that Austin Hayes will be a platoon piece with Brandon Marsh. And where I think, again, I maybe Dominguez flourishes in a lower leverage role, but like knowing what I know about Dominguez and knowing what you know about Dominguez, like I think that it's probably like a very, very small scale win for the Phillies. But like this move to me was probably a numbers move for the Orioles and a platoon move for the Phillies. It's fine. I'm okay with it. I think the Phillies upgrade it where they needed to upgrade it. I don't sit here and I don't think either team is doing jumping jacks over this move.
No. And that's why I think this is that around the edges type of a move for both teams. It's not a flashy move. It's not one that's going to have you ultimately think your team's going to win the World Series because of it. But it does at least give both teams a Band-Aid, honestly, to be able to kind of patch up some areas that needed fixing. Because I know we've talked about, and I'm sure Orioles fans have talked about as well on their side, what are the big pressing needs that can help postseason? And we've discussed, do you need that big flashy outfielder piece or the big bullpen arm? And it feels like the Phillies have prioritized the bullpen arm. That's where they're going to make the biggest move. Again, holding on to prospects, holding on to even somebody like Johan Rojas, some other names that could possibly be utilized in a trade are still at play. So for both teams, a solid move. I don't think either truly won this. I would say the Phillies, if I had to choose, just knowing Seranthony and Cristian had the, like you said, the slight edge, but it just is a solid move to know the Phillies have been proactively bargain shopping, making trades happen, and that more trades are to come, which is the most exciting thing, I think, for me to take away from all this. So that being said, guys, we'll stay tuned on who that bullpen arm is. I don't think it'll be an actual closer, Darth Pooh. It should be a high leverage reliever, though, that they can count on in a closer-like role, but still with Jeff Hoffman, Max Strom, Jose Alvarado will be fine. I'm manifesting that for him.
It might be somebody's closer. I'm just not. I don't think they'll be this team's closer.
Correct. So we will see. We will see. There are a lot of names still out there. Tanner Scott. I don't think Mason Miller is getting moved. The A's have kind of made it clear they don't want to move him, but anything's possible. So we'll be talking with you guys later today.
So.
I know. Lots of trades are still going on around Major League Baseball. We'll continue updating you guys on them as we get the news and get the details and all the nuggets of information we can share as to what it means for the Phillies. But for everybody that tuned in, whether you're a Phillies fan or an Orioles fan, learning about this trade, again, Austin Hayes, the 29-year-old outfielder, headed now to the Phillies. Seranthony Domínguez and Cristian Pache. You get an outfielder, you get a bullpen arm, a right-handed pitcher in Seranthony, headed to the Baltimore Orioles. Trades have been made, and we've got more to come. We'll be back live again today around 6:15 for our pregame show. You guys can tune in for more here at PHLY Phillies podcast as Jamie Lynch, Tyler Zulli, and myself, Renee Washington, will be back live again, previewing the start of the Cleveland Guardians game, watching the game with you, and then with our post-game show. Lots of baseball talk to tune into. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to our emergency podcast presented by Indeed. We'll see you guys next time. Bye.